Welcome back, guys, to the Grateful Living podcast. Today, I am fortunate to have Adam Burak on the podcast. Adam is a consultant at the Winkler Group. The Winkler Group helps nonprofits raise more money to accomplish their missions. Today, Adam is going to talk about his life story and specifically maybe how he struggled with substance abuse and how he's trying to help others be more honest about their mental health and work on getting through things. Adam, thank you for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Arnav. It was great to connect with you, and I absolutely love what you're doing. So I'm happy to share my story, and really, hopefully, if it can help one person, then that's worth it.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's awesome what you're doing, and I know that people will really find it very helpful. So let's go back to the beginning. Let's talk about, where you grew up, maybe your family situation, what type of kid you were, things like that.
Yeah, so it's actually pretty interesting. So I grew up in Massachusetts and spent most of my life in Massachusetts. Grew up in Acton Boxborough, went to Acton Boxborough Regional High School and Acton schools all throughout my childhood. I really grew up at a younger age, being when I first was a lot younger. I was pretty shy, and that really flipped. I became an extreme extrovert, somebody that loved being around other people and loved just getting together with friends. I struggle with being alone.
Yeah.
So that's kind of always what I've been like. And that really, transcended through high school. And it's still how I am.
Yeah.
Now, kind of what happened was I really saw through high school, I love to have fun, and I was connected with a lot of different types of people,
Yeah.
which led me to doing a lot of partying and specifically a lot of drinking. And I know we'll get into that, but
Yeah.
I really found my value, what I thought my value was through high school, was as an entertainer.
Yeah.
Somebody that was the life of the party, that was always having fun, always drinking. And that kind of led me to a road that I didn't want to go on, that I'll get into more.
Yeah. Talk about, I guess the feeling of wanting to be, the life of the party, and where does that come from? Did you just feel an insecurity about fitting in and things like that?
So it actually, I've done a lot of reflecting on this. Because it's kind of why I did what I did.
Yeah.
It wasn't so much an insecurity about fitting in.
Yeah.
It was more that I was an average student in high school. I got B's. I did well. But I never really thought that people valued me for my intellectual ability. I thought people more valued me for, being a jokester, being a class clown, being somebody that wanted to have fun all the time.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that. I always envied people that could do both.
Yeah.
I always through college, I had friends that partied really hard, but also did extremely well in school.
Yeah.
I could never find that balance.
Yeah.
And if I did, I probably would be in a different spot, but it always was one or the other for me. And it came out of I think the life of the party came out of that, not seeing my value as somebody that was intellectual and was really offering a lot, other than being a social person.
It's tough because I think, especially middle school, high school, you start getting characterized into these, like, you're a theater person, you're a jock, you're like, you're a nerd, like, and it's like, it was interesting. Like, Adam and I grew up the same town. We went to the same middle and high school, because there wasn't a lot of interaction within the groups. So a nerd wasn't talking to, a skater kid. Like, and so
Totally.
once you became characterized in one of these situations, it was like you had to like be that for like the next 6 years, like from 7th to 12th.
It's spot on. And I never was, I was also average at sports. So I was average at school, average at sports,
Yeah.
and I was above average at socializing with others.
Yeah.
And I like to have fun with other people. Now, this wasn't a problem in high school, because it was the norm to drink too much.
Yeah.
For my group, it was the norm.
Yeah.
And I got in trouble a few times and still didn't really, it didn't click in my mind. This is not normal.
Yeah.
But you're spot on about the groups. Like, so I was in accelerated classes in high school, which is funny because in Acton Boxborough, if you're accelerated, you're average.
Yeah.
In any other school, that's not the case.
Yeah.
And I also didn't do anything like extracurricular wise. Like, I'm very into politics and government and advocating, and I didn't do any of that in high school. Yeah. I actually ran for class office, but it was as a joke. Yeah. That speaks to the fact that I was just an entertainer. Yeah. I would have loved to be our class president, and I think I would have made a good one. Yeah. I think we had good class presidents, but I never thought, that was a nerdy thing to do. Yeah. So I didn't want to do that. So I did it as a joke because I thought that's why I thought people would be like, oh, that's funny, and then they would say, oh, it's weird if you're actually running for it. Yeah. So I really didn't have somewhere where I identified other than that social aspect.
Yeah. Talk to us about when you first got introduced to alcohol, what was the type of situation it was and things like that.
So I got introduced to alcohol my sophomore year of high school, and I had drank a few times, just a little bit, a couple drinks. My first real time drinking is, and everybody from Acton Boxborough knows about it, is when I got in trouble. And I just completely, it was one of my first times experiencing alcohol, and I drank way too much and had to go to the hospital. Yeah. And so I took a month off after that of drinking.
But this was in this was at a Sweet 16, correct?
It was actually at the football game.
Oh, at a football game.
It was actually at one of the football games, and people drank before the football game. Yeah. So, that was the thing to do.
I'm just setting the scene that this wasn't, you weren't alone in your room. This
was a
social thing. You were doing it with
social
friends.
Thing. Yeah. And you're speaking to kind of what my story is, because I would drink in social situations. I wasn't an alcoholic that would drink alone. I would drink in social situations, but I would drink too much and I couldn't stop. So really I just, I drank a lot of vodka that night. And it was my first experience really getting drunk, and it was scary. But I knew it wasn't a good thing, but I didn't realize that, that it really was going to be going down a bad road. Yeah. I didn't know, because I was like, okay, this can happen. People can get too intoxicated, but I didn't really know that the dangers of alcohol. People had told me them, and told me, you can get addicted and all that. But I didn't really understand it until I experienced it firsthand.
Yeah. It's one of those things, I think, especially at that age, a lot of our friends would just say, oh, it's one of the effects. Oh, passing out is one of the effects. It's just, that happens here and there, and you don't realize,
totally.
How
totally. I heard that a number of times.
Yeah. So you said after that incident, you stopped for a month. Were you stopping because of how you felt, because of parents, what made you stop for that month? So
it was mostly the trouble that I got in. It wasn't my mindset. And that's a really important thing. you're never gonna stop something until you actually realize that it's something that's not good for you and that you have buy-in on not doing something.
Yeah.
So I stopped, and I remember I went to a birthday party about a month later, and drank again. And after going to the hospital. Now looking back, that's not normal.
Yeah.
That, you know, somebody that has had that experience with alcohol should not be drinking. And that's kind of the message that I want to portray, that it's okay if you can't drink. There's so many people, there's millions and millions of people that can't drink because they overdo it. They have genetics. They have some sort of health issue, and that's fine.
Yeah.
So it really wasn't anything. I didn't have a mind. I knew that I was going to drink again when it happened.
Yeah.
Because my mindset wasn't on quitting.
Yeah. So I guess throughout high school you continued, and it really wasn't something that you were like reflecting on or thinking about changing.
No, I completely continued. Really, a lot of what I did revolved around alcohol. Which also is another red flag. I would always, I would want to drink, on the weekends, which again is a normal thing in high school.
Yeah.
And I even would continue to drink, and go to school, sporting events, because that's what everybody did. I told myself that I would never show up to a school sporting event again after drinking, but I did, because it had that hold on me. And really, I didn't see a way to not drink. Now, I didn't get in trouble again in high school, which I'm fortunate to. But things started to go downhill again when I was in college. And I should also say that drinking was still fun when I was in high school. When it becomes not fun, and when it becomes a chore and you don't want to do it, that is a sign to stop. You should 100%. If you ever have any second thoughts about drinking, you should not be doing that. And that's what started to happen in college.
Gotcha. So talk a little bit about starting out in college and the environments that maybe you were getting into, things like that.
Yeah. So my freshman year, I pledged a fraternity right when I started. And drinking was the norm there as well. So it was still all around me. It was still how I derived, the social aspect was still how I derived my value. I talked about in college, I was also doing actually below average my first 2 years because of the drinking and because that was my focus. Plus I wasn't healthy, but my freshman year was, I enjoyed it for the first semester of my freshman year. And then it took a turning point. I got in trouble again at a concert and drank way too much and had to go to the hospital again, which is something I'm very not proud of, and really should have understand how worried it made people around me. Mostly my parents, and my friends not so much, because they didn't really realize how much I was struggling internally with it after that. So I after that, that was really when everything changed. And I started to really not like drinking and not want to drink. This was my freshman year, second semester. And so I took a break over the summer, and which was hard, but good. My mental health was not good at all. I was really going through challenges because I wasn't drinking. The drinking, and most people don't know this, substances can really not do terrible things to your kind of mental makeup. And they can mask different mental health issues that you might have. It's, people say the word self-medicating, but they don't understand that takes away from somebody that's suffering with, say, OCD, for example. They're not going to feel that effect because they're drinking, but it's worse because you're self-medicating not in the right way.
You're not addressing the problem.
Exactly. So there were 2 years after that incident where I went through and I continued to drink, not wanting to, because I didn't know how to go through school without it. And my sophomore year was one of the most challenging times of my life
Yeah.
because I didn't want to drink, and it was I started to really feel that, and it weighed on me, but I didn't know what to do.
Talk about that a little bit more, because is that just you know, from a social perspective, like, on a, if you're seeing everybody else doing it, you're like, man, I'm going to be the only one not doing it, and that's why you were doing it, things like that?
Yeah, totally. And I was scared, honestly. I was like, um, to be truthful, I thought I was depressed, and I thought I was drinking because I was depressed,
Yeah.
but that wasn't the case at all. Because when I wouldn't drink for those short periods of time, I would start to feel better.
Yeah.
But it had such a hold on me, and that environment was so powerful. Like, no, and this is a really important point. I was the only one that knew I was having a problem,
Yeah.
because I wasn't holed up in my room drinking 12 beers on a Monday night. I wasn't drinking alone. I wasn't drinking on Sundays. I was binge drinking
Yeah.
over the weekend. It was
Yeah.
a binge drinking problem.
Yeah.
And so when Sunday came, I would be so anxious. I would be going through withdrawal, and then I would go through withdrawal from Sunday to Thursday, and then I would drink again. It was a horrible spiral of feeling, basically, throughout the whole week, where I would start to feel better on Wednesday, and I would have a productive day on Wednesday, and then I would do it again.
Yeah.
So the fact that I was able to get through school dealing with all this is pretty much a miracle.
Yeah.
And I'm so thankful about it. I remember when we'll get to this, when I graduated, I was like beyond ecstatic because I did it. I conquered it,
Yeah.
and I graduated in time, and I felt really, really good about myself.
Talk about your thoughts on colleges and providing resources. So I'll give you an example. At BC, we used to have our freshman year nights on the heights, and these were these activities where, basically it was these activities like, build a bear, or, a photo booth or whatever, which
A
became,
carnival on the green or something.
yeah, which became,
We had those too.
yeah, which became characterized as the place for freshmen who didn't drink. I mean, that's what we did, Friday and Saturday nights. What unfortunately happened through certain things and reorganization, those got canceled after our freshman year. It got brought on to a different organization. But, when I think about my experience, I'm not sure that, my freshman year, I didn't drink. So I'm not sure that I would have been able to not drink had that not been there. And then my sophomore through senior year, that wasn't there. And, through peer pressure and things like that, I eventually, relented. But I think, for me personally, I think colleges should be providing more resources, more events, and things like on a Friday and Saturday night where you can do something else, where it's not like literally everybody is going to a party.
Yeah, you're spot on. And also post college, that this is something I've noticed. But to speak on the and I forget what Delaware called it, because I did. So when I started to make a change, after I started to do better my junior year, but I actually quit drinking on October 30th, 20. That would have been 2016. So I'm going on 4 years without a sip of alcohol.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you. I'm really, I mean, my life is so much better.
Yeah.
But I went to an alcohol counselor at school, and I credit her with really saving my life, so to speak. Not so much that I was gonna potentially die drinking alcohol, but that I wasn't tapping into who I really am and my true potential. I was losing myself with alcohol, and losing who I am. Anybody that knows me knows that I connect with people with or without alcohol.
Yeah.
A lot of people said to me, "Hey, we don't even think you need to drink alcohol. You're that social." And I've been fortunate to be able to have that because I was able to socialize without alcohol. Which I know a lot of people with social anxiety resort to alcohol to get them to socialize. That's a more challenging thing. But she recommended those events on the weekend for me.
Yeah.
But to talk about classification like we did in high school, I wouldn't go.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go to that.
Yeah.
I thought people that went to that were, and this is when I was younger and less mature.
Yeah.
I thought they were weird. I was like, I don't want to be around those people.
Yeah.
Those aren't my types of people. And it also speaks to how I didn't derive my value from anything like that. I wish I ran for class office in college too. Never did it because I related myself to alcohol. I also wish I did, more clubs, like joined like a fishing club or some sort of politics club, where those activities could have taken up my weekends. I think we're speaking to a more generalized issue.
Yeah.
People post-grad still don't know what to do other than to go out and drink.
Yeah.
I didn't know what to do.
It's been so interesting seeing in quarantine and all these things, how many people can't go without going to a nightclub. That's when you realize how big of a problem it is.
Yeah.
If you can't go 2 months without going to a nightclub and drinking, you may have a bigger problem on your hand.
Totally. And alcohol consumption has gone up since COVID, because people are dealing with the mental health effects that quarantine is having on them, that losing a job is having on them. There are so many other things that you can do to get your mental health in a better situation. It's remarkable how many people I know, or that I see, not even that I know, that just rely on alcohol for their weekend. And it doesn't have to be that way. Now it's really hard at first when you're not going out and drinking, but there are so many other things that you can get into that don't have to do with alcohol. Plus you can go out and not drink. It's amazing how many people I used to ask, because I go out, and one of my things that, and everybody that goes out with me knows this, is I order a cranberry seltzer and lime, or a Coke with a lime, and nobody knows that you're not drinking. You have that drink in your hand, and people are like, "Oh, this kid's just out," and I socialize. And I always say to bartenders, how many people aren't ordering alcoholic drinks? And she said, you're one of the extremely few. People don't go out that don't drink, but it doesn't have to be that way. I know other countries are having some soda clubs and places where people, how cool would it be if we connected without being under the influence of alcohol? How awesome would a situation be where you could go out and not drink alcohol? I think that would be great for a lot of people.
Talk a little bit about your mental health during your high school and college years. And I mean, a lot of this stuff is intertwined, maybe not wanting to deal with your mental health issues makes you Friday and Saturday night just like, I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to, reflect on my problems. I'm going to just, make them go away. Talk about things like that.
Yeah, totally. So I think it speaks to, it started with, deriving my value from being that entertainer and that class clown and socializer. I didn't think I had value in what people saw me intellectually as, because I was average in my community. You know, I never stood out in that way. I stood out for my ability to connect with people and socialize. So that's what I relied on. And I really never had, through high school and younger, I was really always a happy-go-lucky kid. I didn't know that there were a lot of mental health issues going on that I really didn't experience. And so through my drinking, that's how I really kind of discovered that, because when I saw the counselor, she was like, oftentimes somebody with that substance abuse has some sort of mental health challenge that they're going through. So when I stopped drinking, certain things started happening that was really weird. Like, I felt a lot better, but I was having some really weird thoughts going on in my head that I had never had. That they made me think I was depressed. And I found out that when I stopped drinking, I went to go see a psychiatrist. I had never been to a psychiatrist. Through what I was describing to him, I found out that I had been always had OCD. So obsessive compulsive disorder. Now, I thought I knew some people with OCD, and I thought it was obsessive hand washing. And I thought it was being obsessed about how your room looked, or, you organized your desk in high school. I didn't understand all the kind of inner workings of what OCD can present itself like. And I didn't really understand that somebody could have OCD and it not present itself in that way. So once I realized what was going on, it was like, you can't solve a problem unless you diagnose it. And things started to get a lot better.
What was the point at which you said you went to a counselor in college? What made you get to that point? Was it a night out that just was rough, or like what? I mean, because that's an important step, is first acknowledging the problem. Maybe you can talk about that, and then beyond that, taking a step to solve the problem.
Yeah, this is like kind of the if I want anybody to take away anything from this, it's this point. So a number of things. So when I was drinking, and in my freshman year and sophomore year, and I was having all these mental health challenges, I thought I was depressed, as I told you. I did see a counselor then. I saw my pediatrician, and through what I was describing, he wasn't a psychiatrist, so he didn't really understand that all the things that I was experiencing were stemming from the OCD. And I was using the alcohol to combat that. So I was treating depression when I wasn't depressed. So I didn't really know what was going on. But then I was getting help with my alcohol at the same time. So it was suggested to me that I should try to drink in moderation. This is a really key point of when I started to realize, okay, there's going to be a need to have a major change. So I was seeing somebody, and my counselor that I was talking to, and we had set a limit on me of I believe it was 14 drinks throughout the week, because I was mostly drinking 4 nights a week. So that would equate to 3 drinks a night, about. And I could do it during the week. I would have a couple beers, or, I would ration out my alcohol, and then I would switch to, a soda that would look like alcohol after. And so, but then Saturday, Delaware would always have day parties. So you would start drinking at 10 or 11 a.m. And drink all day. Now, it was so hard for me to drink in moderation and stick to that 14 drink limit, that I would always end up just saying fuck it and drink a ton on Saturday.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this would happen, verbatim all the time.
Yeah.
And so really what the turning point was it was homecoming, my senior year of college. About 2 months in, I was drinking and binging, on Saturdays. Homecoming came, and I drank a lot, and I would always tell her how many drinks I had on every day and I came in, and that Saturday I had 15 drinks.
Wow.
And so that wasn't uncommon, on Saturdays. And really what happened was on that Sunday, I went to a mental health awareness walk.
Yeah.
And I was extremely hungover, withdrawing, and I was walking in a mental health awareness walk when my mental health was horrible.
Yeah.
And I wasn't addressing my mental health.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait a second, this doesn't make sense at all. Why am I doing this? Like, I can't drink in moderation. I can't drink at all. I just can't do it.
Yeah.
So and we can get into the steps that I took after I made this decision, but that was October 30th, that Saturday, in 2016. Awesome. And I made the decision to never, to not drink again. Yeah. And then I started to develop steps to not do that.
Yeah. So I guess, have you, what were the immediate steps you took after that? Let's talk about that.
So the first steps I took, because as I told you, I derive value from social and emotional connections with others. I started to tell people. I started to say, hey, I don't know if you know this, but I've been having a really hard time with alcohol. And people didn't know it because the stereotypical alcoholic in college was drinking alone in their room. Yeah. And I wasn't doing that. I was just binging. Yeah. So I started to tell people, and I was extremely fortunate to have great reactions from people. I knew that I couldn't do it if I didn't have people really fully understanding of what was going on. Yeah. That was going to be a big part of it. Yeah. And so people said, I'm here to support you. I must have texted, I thought about posting on Facebook, but people that I didn't really interact with didn't need to know right then. Yeah. So I really talked to people all around me. And they were supportive. Yeah. Awesome. And then I told myself, okay, you're going to go get more help. You're going to go, so I went to the alcohol counselor the next day, and got help there, got a resource. So at that time I was seeing, both an alcohol specific counselor and a therapist, to help me through it. We developed plans, talked every week. She checked in on me. I also would, get away from campus on the weekends, which was transformational. Yeah. And it's worth mentioning, I met my girlfriend a week after I stopped drinking, that I'm still with. Yeah. We've been together for about 3 years. So I started dating her, which was extremely helpful because I could confide in her. And she understood, and would, she had friends and she was still drinking. So she would stay on campus sometimes, but we went to school in Delaware and there wasn't much to do outside of campus. So we would go to DC for the day, or we would go, visit her parents in Baltimore, which was really helpful because I felt like I wasn't able to not drink around people until about a few months after. I had to just get away.
To take yourself out of that situation. That's smart. I guess the hard part in cutting off cold turkey like that is the desire to go back, the withdrawals. That physically your body is like, you can't control that. I mean, there's the mental aspect, but like physically your body is used to, on a Saturday, you drinking alcohol. Talk about that. Were you ever close to drinking after that October 30th date?
So, not immediately.
Okay.
I wasn't immediately, but you're spot on about the withdrawals and the effect on the mental health that not having alcohol in your system has, especially for a prolonged amount of time. It gets better. So and I'm not going to be spot on medically right now,
Yeah.
but what my counselor told me was you have different 3 months. It gets once you've been 3 months without it, it gets out of your system and the withdrawals start to go away.
Yeah.
Then really the time where they completely go away is a year.
Yeah.
So I took it day by day. And my motto was, I won't drink today.
Yeah.
And so I every time I went by a liquor store, I had a craving to go in and get alcohol.
Yeah.
My gym was right near a liquor store, so every time I did that, I had cravings all the time, no
Yeah.
matter what time of day. But the thing that people don't understand, and even with tobacco, is that it's a craving. It goes away if
Yeah.
you don't succumb to it. It'll go away.
Yeah.
Similar to people that struggle with overeating or really anything, any addiction. If you have a craving and you don't respond to it, it'll just go away.
Yeah.
And so I really got good at, distracting myself and just realizing that it was a craving.
Yeah.
But as I mentioned, I had to do things that were good for my mental health, like get away from school, really study a lot more. My grades started to go up,
Yeah.
as I went through this. The other important thing was my mental health still wasn't, it was better, but it still wasn't phenomenal. And I was having those stereotypical symptoms of OCD, intrusive thoughts, which nobody really understands.
Yeah.
Weird thoughts in my mind that had never really been there. So it was that winter after I had quit in October that I went to a therapist and basically told him everything that had gone on, my whole story.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, I mean, you've been living with OCD. And so he prescribed me medicine to help with that. And really things started to get incredibly better since then.
Yeah.
And my spring of my senior year was one of my best parts of college, because my mental health was finally better.
Yeah. At what point were you able to, I mean, because you stopped your senior year of college, which is an interesting time to stop, because that's when people drink a lot, knowing it's their last year of college and things like that. At what point were you able to go to a Saturday party and be comfortable not drinking and not missing it?
Yeah, that's such an important thing that you say, because there were parts of me that were like, was like, I know I need to do this. I know I need to quit, but I'm not going to do it in college. It's too hard. I'm just going to live it out. But the Sunday through Thursday and the withdrawals got so bad that I was having a hard time. I had an internship at the time. I was having a hard time like working.
Yeah.
It was impacting all of my mental health and my ability to do school,
Yeah.
to the point where I didn't know if I'd have a job out of college if I continued.
Yeah.
And it was a crucial point in what I was doing, because I made an amazing turnaround.
Yeah.
And it got me to where I am right now.
Yeah.
Because I quit at that moment.
Yeah.
And so part of me was like, I'm not going to do this right now.
Yeah.
I'm just going to wait. I'm going to wait till after I graduate. It's going to be, and it's going to be fine. Everybody drinks in college. It's fine. Like, you can do it. You can just wait. And then it just hit a point where I was like, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
And I'd say by second semester, I was going out again, and in very limited capacity. I would go to the bar and I would order non-alcoholic drinks, and everybody knew around me, so they weren't pressuring me. I don't know if I got pressured at a bar to drink even once, which is remarkable.
Yeah.
And hear me when I say this, people do not care. If you're doing what's good for yourself,
Yeah.
people don't care.
Yeah.
They care. Everybody is the star of their own movie.
Yep.
Like, nobody cares about what you're doing. It's such a common misconception. And people hold this, throughout. It's even more common when you're younger. People think that everybody sees what you're doing around them. Nobody sees it. They see what they're doing. Nobody cares.
Yep.
So the second I told people, I had support, and people were like, you need to come out and be sober.
Yeah.
So I became the least responsible person to the most responsible person, basically over a period of a couple months.
Yeah.
And I quit in college.
Yeah.
I know people that have struggled drinking when they're in their 70s.
Yeah.
I did not want to do that because I knew who I was and I knew what I wanted to do. I couldn't get to my goals if I was still drinking.
Yeah. I think also people struggle with telling their friends, but I think from a friend's perspective, they're almost going to have more respect for you because they might have something in their life that they should probably stop doing. And you're doing that. You're addressing a part of your life that you want to change, and you're doing it. So I think a lot of people get nervous about telling their friends, but a true friend will give you props. Like, wow, like he's trying to go in a positive direction. He's trying to make some positive moves in his life. So that's great that they were supportive.
Yeah, completely. And I've gotten texts from friends, from other people, just saying how amazing it was that I did what I did and I did the right thing for me.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be an amazing thing. Everybody should do what's right for them and feel it's a hard thing to do, but everybody should feel like they can have the power to do what's good for them. And people that are standing next to them should empower them to do that. I also really I've also helped people, that people were like, I don't like drinking myself.
Yeah.
I'm going through the same thing as you. And I say, anything you need, I'm a phone call away.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to support you in any way I can. I've had a couple friends that have gone through bouts of quitting, one that is still not drinking. Unbelievably happy for him, because this is what I want people to do. If something's not good for somebody, they should get support and stop. Nothing's more important than your physical and mental health. And you should do everything in your power to be able to do that. The other amazing thing that has come from my story and what has happened is the fact that I really feel empowered to talk about mental health because I've gone through it.
Yeah.
And to talk about the fact that our system doesn't work and is broken. The stigma around mental health, I dealt with it. I've gone through it. It's complete crap. It's a really, really sad thing because nobody should have to go through what people go through and not because they're embarrassed. If I told you that I had a cold or that I had the flu, you would tell me to go to the doctor. Why if somebody's mental health is not in a good place, why does somebody say, oh, you shouldn't get help? Why are we embarrassed that we're treating something that should be treated and is just like any physical health issue in our body? It makes no sense, and it needs to change. Otherwise, people are going to continue. We're going to see more kids struggling with mental health. We're going to see less, society's not going to be able to function the way it should. If our mental health isn't in check, nothing else can work. Yeah.
It's been interesting because I've been pretty vocal about my mental health struggles, and it's always interesting when people are like, but you're so social, you're so confident in like, um,
You're so
like
smart.
parties or
You went to beat Boston College. You graduated. You have a job.
yeah,
You're
yeah,
so smart. You're fine. I
yeah,
got
yeah,
the same thing.
yeah,
Nobody knows, and this is a incredibly cliche phrase, but nobody knows the battle that somebody else is fighting.
yeah,
And everybody's fighting a battle.
yeah,
I don't know anybody that hasn't had some sort of mental health challenge.
yeah,
Now, it was funny, like, I've basically I said, my life growing up was great.
yeah,
I didn't see anybody struggling around me.
yeah,
That's because they didn't talk about it.
yeah.
That's just because they
Take it,
kept it internally.
yeah,
And I didn't know you had struggled.
yeah,
And I listened to your podcast, which is what the reason I'm here today
yeah,
is to say that I want to join you in a movement of everybody talking
yeah,
about what they've gone through. I've seen celebrities, Michael Phelps,
yeah,
was suicidal.
yeah,
If we can normalize getting help and getting it from a really early age, if speaking to a therapist is just like putting on a Band-Aid when you get a cut,
yeah,
then that will save people's lives,
yeah,
literally.
yeah,
And there's no reason that we should have the mental health challenges that we do right now.
yeah,
If we start by ending the stigma and getting people talking more,
yeah,
that's the beginning.
yeah. And the crazy thing is that it ends, like, I think you talked about this a little bit, but like it ends up making you a better version of yourself by actually acknowledging the problem and embracing it. You end up reaching your potential, because if you always hide it, you always deal with it on your own. Those are tough hours when you're alone. But if you have the ability to recognize, oh, this is probably, just my anxiety talking, then you approach it differently. You're like, all right, let me do something to like just take my mind off of feeling so anxious.
Yeah, exactly. I think the hardest part is opening up to the first person.
Yeah,
When you open up to the first person and you get a good reaction, one, you inspire them to potentially open up to somebody else,
yeah,
and two, you have somebody that you can say, what if somebody at work, said, hey, I'm actually really having a hard time, I'm pretty anxious about this thing. And the person at work would say, oh, I completely understand. Instead of bottling it up
yeah,
and self-medicating it and dealing with it just on your own. We don't deal with anything else on our own.
no.
If I have some sort of physical symptom,
If you break your
I
leg,
yeah, if I break my leg, even more simply, if I have a sore throat, I go to the doctor.
yeah,
But if somebody experiences some sort of anxiety or bipolar symptoms, anything like that, nobody talks about it.
yeah.
They're ashamed about it. Literally, there's nothing you
Even
can
though the
do.
mind is part of the body.
Totally, it's a mind thing. It's nothing
Yeah,
you did.
yeah,
It's and it's nothing that it's you need to get treated for it. It's
yeah,
nothing that you caused. I think that's another thing. Like, people think that people cause themselves to have depression. There's certain things that, like trauma, that causes depression.
yeah,
Stuff that's out of your control, the way you grew up,
yeah,
whether you got bullied, that you can't do anything about. It's a brain chemistry thing.
yeah,
That's why there's medicine for it. They don't just tell you to go outside and take a walk.
yeah,
You need to treat the actual chemical thing that's going on in your body to get better.
yeah,
And before you do that, no matter what you do in your life, I could have quit drinking, gotten into a great relationship, gotten a good job, but if my mental health isn't right, nothing's going to function well.
yep,
And that's what people don't understand sometimes. They think they can fix it.
yep. So, we were at the point where October 30th, you decide to make the change. you're meeting with a counselor on a, you know, a weekly basis or something
Weekly,
like
yeah.
that.
I was actually seeing my therapist once a week and my alcohol counselor once a week.
Awesome.
And they were not easy sessions. You really get into really what's going on and talk about it. But and if I could just say this also about therapists, I've heard from a number of people, and I was afraid. I always said counselor because I was worried about the word therapist.
Yeah.
It has a very negative connotation to it.
Yeah.
But if I told you, Arnav, that if I said, would you like to have a third party in your life that you could talk to, that's a constant in your life, and that you can open up to without a fear of a bias, wouldn't you say, oh yeah, I'll do that?
100%. Yeah.
And also the other thing is, what if I told you that it would be a free service, and that you didn't have to pay? Therapy and counseling and mental health is way too expensive.
Yeah.
For everybody should have access to mental health resources.
Yeah.
And this brings me to my point, and something that I would love to work for is that we normalize mental health services from the second kids are in elementary school. We bring in contracted mental health workers, counselors, to help kids see that it's just as normal as going to the school nurse when you're dealing with something, instead of internalizing it, having it come out in bullying, having it come out in behaviors. Why do we react? We had behavioral counselors all in elementary school and high school. Why do we wait to diagnose the behavior rather than the issue? Backwards on it. So, and the second you get more counselors in at an earlier age, it gets normalized to kids, and you have kids that are talking to mental health counselors. So if mental health therapists, psychiatrists, if you went to one in high school, and I saw you going to one, I'd say, hey, Arnav, how did that help? And you're like, oh yeah, well, I just talked to her about what was going on with me. It would be just as normal as seeing somebody, going to extra help for a teacher.
Yep. And if it's something that is ingrained with you at a young age, then suddenly it's not a stigma, because then it's
exactly
a part of your life.
We completely start treating the issues rather than stigmatizing the people that are talking about their mental health. I remember seeing posts of people that were cutting themselves in high school, and I was like, oh, I wonder why they caused that to happen to themselves.
Yeah.
That's not what happens.
Yeah.
And the other issue is that people aren't mature. There's no maturity. If somebody was cutting themselves right now and I talked to my friends, about it, we would say, how can we help that person? Not how can we stay away from that person?
Yeah.
It's a really sad thing about the maturity level. But if we ingrain these things in these kids at a younger age, then that goes away. Yeah. And you save so many people.
Yeah. Makes society and the community better if everyone's thriving.
Exactly. Yeah. So we need to have more conversations like this.
Yeah.
And we need kids to be able to have conversations like this.
Yeah. Talk again, I guess, a little bit about what are things that you've done, maybe post-grad and stuff like that have, allowed you to keep the discipline of not drinking and of keeping your mental health as good as you can keep it, things like that.
Yeah. So now it's really hard to do, but I like to meditate a lot and really get into a kind of a subconscious state. And that really helped. Mindfulness is really helpful. Yeah. Working out, cooking, exercising, playing golf, doing recreational activities,
Yeah.
Working is really important. Finding a sense of purpose
Yeah.
is really a great thing. A lot of people will find help, through religion. They'll find something that is bigger than the alcohol to them.
Yeah.
For me, I really want that to be the kind of volunteer work and what I do outside of my day job, because it's not healthy to focus on work all the time, as you and I know.
Yeah.
But you need other things to offset that you're really interested in.
Yeah.
And one of the things that really, really has helped me is finding a career that I'm really happy about. So I mentioned how the spring of my senior year of college in 2017 was transformational for me. I decided that I was going to go away from home and do an AmeriCorps service year.
Awesome.
And I was surrounded by 30 people that were very similar to me in their desire to help people, which was incredibly helpful. And I learned even more how much I loved connecting with people and helping people.
Yeah.
And that is who I am and who I always have been.
Yeah.
I might have lost it through drinking a little bit, but I've always been somebody that will pick up somebody when they're down and include other people. And that's who I am. That I found who I am and what my value is. And you talked about self-esteem we can get into self-esteem a little bit on this episode. You talked about self-esteem, being a driver of your mental health taking a turn. And my self-esteem was derived by that entertainment and was low, when I wasn't, and what I didn't have a lot of self-esteem in other areas.
And the thing is, you think that your friends' acceptance level of you depends on you always entertaining.
Totally. Just like how, if you were, in AP classes or in a band, you think that you have to be the top of the top for people to accept you. So really, through my not drinking, I have gained an incredible amount of self-esteem. I can't understate that enough. I will walk into, I don't care what other people think because I know who I am. And that's also helped me with my work. Because I know I'm doing what I need to do, and I know who I am. When you realize that, really things start to turn around. So I'm, even if I share something with a friend, I feel comfortable doing that because I have the self-esteem to know that I'm somebody that likes to help people and derive my my fulfillment from that. So that's what I try to do in every aspect of my life.
That's awesome. I guess anything else that you want to, so it's been, I just want to acknowledge how helpful it is to hear about your journey. Because I think that there's a stereotype that, alcoholism is you drinking alone in your room, where, a lot of it is in front of everybody in social situations, just binge drinking. And the reality is, your friends at those parties aren't looking at how much or what you're drinking and things like that. So they might not even be aware. It's on you, which is the tough part to realize.
They also they're not in your headspace the next day and the next 3-4 days. They're never in your headspace. They're focused in their headspace. And if their headspace is good and they're doing the same thing as you, I always envy those people, but I wouldn't trade where I am right now for anything. I wouldn't trade my sobriety from alcohol for anything. It's been one of the highlights of my life to be able to do this, and to be able to do it so early, and get ahead of it. When I tell you I wouldn't be where I am today without doing it, that's not an understatement. I don't know if I would have gotten a job out of college, because it was just getting worse, and it just gets worse. Every day you don't address it, it just gets worse. So I'd add that anybody that would like to learn more or talk about, anything, always reach out to me. Arnav has my cell phone number, my email, and I want to thank you for all that you're doing, because you speaking up about your mental health inspired me to do that. That's what I've told my story to individuals. Never told it on a public setting.
I didn't know that about you. I didn't know
exactly. And so we want more people to do this. We want to have a full Zoom of people talking about this. I mean, that's the goal. Because this is what life is. Life is hard. And when you realize that, and realize that everybody is dealing with something, things start to change, and you really get empowered to help yourself and help others.
So, and then it was great to see through a counselor and things like that you made the change, and eventually, you did other things on Saturdays, occupied your time elsewhere, focused on different things. And then, 3 to 6 months later, you were at a point where you could still go to parties and not care about not drinking. And then I think you talked about purpose and finding that, and that helping in, finding something bigger than you allows you to not really miss it and things like that.
And the second you focus on your well-being, things start to happen that are positive around you. I mentioned that I met my girlfriend, Grace, right after I quit drinking. I got into AmeriCorps. I've had an amazing, I live in Charleston. I have a great job. I've got awesome people around me. I just want to take a second to, thank my family for their support, my girlfriend Grace, all of my friends, anybody that is in my life. I wouldn't be here and who I am today without you. I love all you guys, and I'm really, if this helps one person, I will come forward every single. I will help every day of the year. I will talk about and my goal is to, really talk to people and say this is what life is, and this is where we are as a society, and I want to see it get better. So I'm ready to do that and help in any way that I can, as I know you are. So I'm glad that we were able to connect.
Thank you for being a resource.
Thank you for all the people that you're helping.
Thank you. So how can people want to reach out or something like that, and maybe have a conversation with you? How can they reach out to you on social media?
Friend me on Facebook. I don't do much Facebook Messenger. Friend me on Facebook, Instagram, really anything.
What's your Instagram?
So it's Adam _ Burak 12. Shout out to Tom Brady for the Super Bowls as well. And so that's my Instagram. You can email me at Burak, which is BURAK, at Winkler, WINKLER group.com. And then you can also call or text me at 978-621-1108. When I say that I love to talk on the phone, it's not an understatement. I pick up random numbers, which I know is rare. So if you're reaching out, just I'd love to talk and further the conversation in any way I can.
Thank you for doing that, Adam.
Thank you.
I appreciate you being on the podcast, and look forward to seeing all the the continued great work that you're doing. Thank you again.
Thanks, Arnav. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend.
Yes, you too.